Hey guys, so today we have a special guest today, Pac, who you probably know from YouTube, who came second place at LCS 8 this past weekend with Virtual World. How are you doing today, man?
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me on the channel. I'm doing pretty well. I'm really excited to talk about this deck, man. I think it's really cool how the deck works. I mean, it's pretty degenerate, but it should be interesting.
Yeah, so I know you did a profile or two already, so I'm going to try my best not to be repetitive. So I thought I'd start out by asking you several questions, kind of more of an interview, and then we can just do a quick summary of your deck profile at the end. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds perfect to me.
All right. Any shoutouts before we begin, or would you prefer to do it at the end?
Yeah, we can do it now. I guess shout out to my team, Luxury Gaming, and of course to the whole Luxury Gaming admin team, the mod team who helped like basically made the tournament run pretty smoothly. And then, of course, shout out to, I guess, self plug my YouTube channel, my Twitch community. All that information will be, I guess, in the description box below. But they were like the reason why I decided to play this deck. And then, yeah, just shout out to everyone who just were really supportive throughout the whole way.
Yeah, of course, and I'll have all those links down below. So I guess that's actually a good transition. So in your profile, I know you said you considered Shadal and in for Noble Knight for this tournament, which I assume you're probably more comfortable with and have more experience with. But did you really see the potential of Virtual World in terms of being able to do really well, or was the outcome still kind of a surprise for you?
Yeah, so funny enough, I've tested the deck prior to this archetype being released in the TCG for like 2 months prior. So when the cards were still released in the OCG, and they were announced to be in Phantom Rage, I like tested the deck like 2 months prior to when it actually came out, and I knew that the deck had potential. I knew that the deck was like good, and I already knew most of like the combos already. So there was like when I picked up the deck this week on Tuesday, like when I was testing it all week at locals, it was a refresher. Like so I didn't have to work like 2 or 3x as many people who were testing for like months on end for this.
Right.
And then in terms of like to answer your question on like playing Infernoble Shaddolls and like the outcome, I mean, I think I was comfortable with all the decks to be honest, just because like I played this deck for an entire week, and like if you see like in the deck profile like my deck building, I added in cards such as Foolish Burial Goods to like help with consistency, because funny and ironically enough, my build was actually very, if I think there was only a 1 card difference in my deck to Nets, the guy who won the entire thing, prior to me changing it last minute. And that was just because when I played the 3 triple tactics in the main deck, I kept bricking on it, and my logic was that when I could play, I was already winning, and when I couldn't play, the tactics just bricked me. So that was like my logic. But like I didn't really get to like test with anyone. I just like played it with real cards at remote duels on my Twitch. And from it was from there that I like determined that this deck would be good. But ultimately, I kind of just asked my Twitch chat what they would like to see me play this weekend, because I originally was gonna keep it a surprise and I was gonna actually play Infernobles, but I was like, I'll just have it open up to my community and ask them what they want to see me play on a competitive level, and then they decided they wanted to see this deck.
Right. And I know you've also been a very big fan of Prank Kids, and I actually kind of thought maybe you would try that instead. And do you have any thoughts on whether you still think it's, kind of a tier one or a very competitive deck in this format?
Yeah, I think the deck is still very strong, but I think the reason why there was like zero conversion to top cut from Prank Kids is because it just has like a really bad matchup against Virtual Worlds. And also like it loses to what Zoo loses to, which is like an inherent like stop on the normal summon. And I think everyone was kind of like prepared for Prank Kids. Like people had Twin Twisters and Cosmics over Lightning Storm in the side deck, right? So people are adjusting their side deck for the metagame. So, and Prank Kids inherently just loses to a shotgun of Cosmics or Twin on their Pandemonium in the standby. And that also holds true for Shaddolls, which was one of the reasons why I didn't want to play Shaddolls. Like I just knew that like people were siding in cards for other decks, but it like indirectly hurt Shaddolls, like hurting the Schism and shotgunning the Schism, or like being able to stop it in standby is like really really bad. So that's why I was just like, what people were like. I expected people to be prepared for those types of decks. And also like Prankiz just has like a really bad matchup against Dino because when they activate miss, like you just can't battle butler them and they'll book a moon all your monsters and just kill you. And so like I just knew that Dino was always gonna be a prevalent deck. And then also like Prankiz just has like a terrible time going second, so you have to fit in a lot of hand traps and stuff. But when you find out that you're fitting in like 15 hand traps, even though they're one card combos like Zoo, technically Zoo doesn't lose to any hand traps, right? When they just go overlay Trident. Well, with Prank Kids, you have to make that link one, and you still get stopped by an Ash. So that's like the biggest difference between Prank Kids and Zoo, and why Zoo like did slightly better in my opinion.
Right, right. No, that's very insightful. I guess. I mean, what I think question a lot of people are asking, how do you think Virtual World would do if VFD were to get banned?
Yeah, I think the deck would obviously be a lot more fair. I think what so like it's funny because like I actually didn't summon VFD a lot in a lot of my matchups because I actually was playing against a lot of trap decks. Like I played against like Elec Stun. Like the guy had main deck summon limit and like just every floodgate under the sun. And I played against like a lot of what is it, Zoo? I played against Zoo Dogmatica in like all these decks. And in those instances, like making VFD is just so bad against Zoo. Like I think people, and this is a trap that a lot of players fall into. Like they stick to one linear combo, or they memorize one thing, they keep doing it over and over. But you find out very quickly that like you don't even have to test. You kind of just know if you were to like make calamities against Zoo, they can just overlay for Trident, and then on your turn they out your calamities with just Trident in your draw phase or whatever. So like it was just never a card that did anything, and that's when you have to like adjust your play, and you realize that like against like trap decks, you literally just make Crocosaur Dragon, have a trap, and then Zoo just can't beat that. Like Prank Kids just can't beat that. Um, and then the other thing to note is that in all those instances against trap decks, you just never made VFD, and that's like the versatility of this deck compared to other decks such as like going a little further here, but like other decks compared to like Mermills, right? Like the question people might be asking in their heads is like, if a deck can turbo out VFD, then that deck is supposedly good, right? But it's not the case with Virtual Worlds because what they have in this archetype is that they have the trap card, and that's like leagues beyond what other decks like Mermills doesn't have. Is that when you played the Mermill deck, which I piloted way back when at the PPG to I think like top 4. I turboed VFD, I handled my opponent, but the issue that I kept finding was that I didn't have good recovery. But then this deck inherently has built-in averses. It has built-in recovery at end phase with Shishi. It has Lulu for follow-up, and you always set up double spell Qinglong in the graveyard to ensure that you always have a follow-up. And that was like the biggest difference where like when they make VFD, they can kill you the next turn. Or when they make Crocosaur, they always have like they would have 6 cards in hand because they would draw so much cards. Add back at end phase, and then you have like a trap and a pop off Crocosaur, and then all the hand traps that like you would draw on.
Right.
And that's like the beauty with this deck. And obviously, if VFD gets hit, like it makes the combo matchup a lot harder. But against trap decks, it still fares very well. Like you just, I feel like you would position it to a more control deck at that point.
Right, right. Okay. And we've been kind of touching up on, or you've been touching on this rather, but I guess I know you've talked some of your matchups on your profile before, but anything you'd want to highlight, especially type of decks that you find this deck struggles against, but type of decks that you think it's really strong against?
I think this deck actually has like really good matchups against every single deck in the meta, and that's why it did so well. If you pilot this deck like and use its versatility to its fullest, like I think you can honestly beat like any deck. And that's just because like if you think about it, the trap card is so versatile, right? It stops your VFD from getting like negated. The trap card is like a nice pop to like out. Like I remember against like Dinos, my opponent activated Lost World. He normal summoned Overraptor, and then he just did the usual Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2, put a token on my side, and then Overraptor added Miss. He went into Nad Miss, and he dumped the Miss. And then to play around Ash on Miss, he went Overraptor, target my token that he put off Lost World. And at that point, I chained the trap card to pop his field spell, which means that he has to resolve the Overraptor effect to summon the Miss from the graveyard. And at that point, right, he gets put in an awkward position. His miscellaneous source is no longer in his graveyard. And if he were to make Dolka, he just loses to a Qinglong on the following turn. Um, and so like he just had to make an awkward play. We had to like make Phoenix, and then he had to like make, I think, Phoenix or something. No, actually, I don't even know what he did. I think he just made Dolka pass, and then I went Qinglong negate, and he just lost the game. And that's why like the versatility of this deck is like so strong just from that. Like there's like really cool outplays you can do. And being able to play hand traps in this deck is also like kind of nice, which is like you generally don't find in like combo decks. Um, so yeah, I just think it has like a good match. It like has like there's no matchups where you're like, man, I'm like auto losing, like, which is like kind of nice because like remember when you were playing Dragon Link, like Dinos was such a terrifying matchups because like they would get Buster Lock, but then still like OTK you through it, which was so scary. And that's why you saw the prevalence or like the surgence or resurgence of Infernobles this tournament, right? Because everyone wanted to play Infernobles to counter like Dinos. Like Dinos was like such a bad matchup, and it was such a bad matchup for like even like against Buster Blader decks. Like this deck still doesn't lose to it because all your effects activate in the hand. So like getting Buster Blade like just didn't matter. This deck doesn't lose to any Floodgate because you can get Tikabooed and still play because the deck inherently has Worms and Psychics, and then its extra decks are like Stardust Charge, which is a warrior. You have Vermilion Math Mech, which is a machine. You have Crocosaur which is like I think a fish. Coral Dragon is a dragon, and so like you just have like every different types under the sun, and so it just like didn't matter if you get Tikabooed, which happened to me like as well. And so like it just like didn't have any bad matchups. I thought like there was never a time where I'm like, man, like I'm like dreading to play. I guess technically the bad matchups that it struggles against is it goes for any deck, which I think like doesn't really count. But it's essentially if you're going to go against a combo deck and you don't draw hand traps, like obviously that's gonna be rough because you just auto lose. So the mirror is like pretty obnoxious. Going second against Infernoble is pretty bad. Against Dragon Link, you can actually break a full Dragon Link board with just Virtual War cards, ironically enough. But you need to draw like 3 names, like Capital and like the spell. But it's like very possible to break a Buster Lock with just Virtual Will cards.
Right, right. Okay, well, I guess we can just kind of move straight into the deck profile now and do kind of a quick summary
Yep.
here. I'm gonna just start with the
Yeah.
list you provided for me, starting with Yash. If you want to just move along, and I'll follow
Yeah,
along.
so the first 8 cards are all hand traps, and if you just run like a hyper geometric calculator, you'll know that it's like, I think it's 69.44% to like see one hand trap, and most virtual lists that did well in nets who won the entire thing only played 6 hand traps. I decided to play 8 because I really liked Ash Blossom. Like my the hand traps that I wanted to main deck were Gamma Nib. I know other virtual world players and a lot of players actually in the entire tournament actually sided Nib. Like they didn't main Nib, but I figured that I didn't think there was going to be a high representation of virtuals, but I definitely expected people were going to play it. So I wanted to prep for that because Nibiru is just like really strong hand trap against that. And so that why that card is in my main deck compared to my side deck. And then Ash Blossom was the most generic hand trap that I wanted at least 2 in my deck because you thin your deck out really fast with the virtual because they're all gazelles. But the cool thing about this deck is also you draw a lot too. So in those draw cards, you thin your deck out and you draw a bunch of cards. And cards such as Ash Blossom, if you were to have, is just like so impactful, especially in like very like grinding mid gamey type of scenarios. You find that Ash Blossom just cripples and like makes your opponent pass or lose like a lot of resources. So that's why I decided to play the Ash Blossom on top of like the 6 hand traps. I definitely didn't regret playing the additional ashes. I thought that they were like so good. I honestly wish I played 3, but I think 2 was still fine. Where like I didn't have to like worry about drawing multiples, which is like always like the worst thing about playing, I guess 3. But I mean with desires is like kind of okay. Um, so yeah, so that was my pretty much my hand trap count. I think all of them are just like super impactful. Like they were all like really really good. If you think about it, like the Ash and the Gamma meant that I had 5 cards that were like really good against Dinos, like going second, right? Like Gamma on the miss, Ash on the miss is very strong. And like 5 is like a really good number to at least like see 1 still. Um, it's I guess like it's a good number to see a 1 of and like not see multiples. It's like the same reason why like Jesse Cotton always like wants to play 5 starters, even though it look awkward, but like on paper, it like 5 starters is like supposedly mathematically correct. And so I thought that like having 5 hand traps against Dinos was good. Um, and then the nibs are just icing on the cake because it's in a card that's offensive and defensive, going first or second. Like if I had a Nibiru in the finals, my own Nibiru, I would have won the game, or like the game three at least. But I just didn't have it. But I kept it in. Gamma is also offensive and defensive, and you'll find that like all these hand traps are like super offensive and defensive. In terms of like that, they can be used multiple ways. Like the Gamma being able to like ensure that your first virtual card goes through is just insane. Even though you play Desires, I still think you have to play Gamma. I think it's just too good not to. And then Ash Blossom is the same logic, right? You can Ash Blossom your opponent's Gamma to ensure that you have cards to resolve, and like that type of I guess defensive factor just like so strong. And then for the virtual main monster count, I maxed on all of them. I don't really need to explain this. You need it because this deck has consistency issues, so you have to max them all out. Call by the Grave. This was my third Ash, but then I replaced it with Call by the Grave. I really liked it. I thought this card was just like I said, I really like cards that are really strong offensively and defensively. I really like that good balance of both, and Call by the Grave is one of that card. E-Telly is very strong. It's just like basically another virtual card, but doesn't use your normal. And of course, like the two Foolish Bear Goods that I honestly probably will cut in my updated list. I think Tactics is definitely better. But I played it because I like the locals or this week of testing prior to the actual event. I kept bricking with the deck. And I would lose just to like not because like I like couldn't play, like not because I couldn't like like beat my opponent or whatever. It just was straightly due to the fact that I bricked, and I was getting really frustrated with bricking. So I was like, you know what, like last minute I'm gonna put in two Foolish Bear Goods because in an LCS or like a big event where there's like multiple rounds, you want your deck as consistent as possible to ensure that you make top cut, and that's like kind of like the goal with this deck building. But obviously, if you can get to top cut, I think Tactics would have been a lot better. Three Desires, I don't need to explain that. Three Capital, three Quinglong, three Trap. So I don't need to explain any of that. I think they're all really good.
Right.
You have to max out on those.
And now I know actually a lot of the virtual world decks in Top Cut they played Skill Drain, and I know you didn't.
Yeah.
But is that something you would consider, or it's something you prefer not to play?
Yeah, I think you can't main it no more because this deck did so well this past weekend, which means that you're gonna see a lot more mirrors with this deck, which means that that card is just terrible in the mirror. Against every other deck, it's like pretty good. Against combo is really good, but I just thought about the fact that like if you're going first, I'd rather have it be a playable card or a card that helps me play. Because if you set up VFD right, like against combo, which is the only thing that that trap card is good against, you win anyways. Against like Zoo, I guess it's really good against, but like realistically, if you pop the normal summon, unless they have Barrage or Monster Reborn, you're winning anyways. So like I see the value of that card being very strong, but I can also like I said, I think the focus on my list was like to have it be consistent as possible. Like I just didn't want to play anything that just wasn't wasn't necessary. So it's just like obviously I have to play the driver. Some people meme about that in the comments, but yeah, I mean like I think the card's really good. I would probably side it just because I think everyone's gonna be playing this deck now. But like I said, going first, if you have a playable hand, and you should be winning anyways, to be honest.
Right. I guess we can just move on to the extra deck, starting with Cloud Castle here.
Yeah, so Cloud Castle is like, I mean, this card is insane. The second effect actually comes up a lot. Yeah, there's actually a situation where I got impermed on my Cloud Castle, and I couldn't bring back a 9 to make the VFD, so I passed on Cloud Castle and the trap and Ash in hand. My opponent made I like hand dropped my opponent, and the best he was playing Dragon Link, and the best he could do was make Savage, actually. So like he went like Striker Dragon, pop his field spell, made Savage, and then he tried to like go and attack the Cloud Castle, and he couldn't actually attack because of its like second effect. So that actually comes up, which is like really important. And that was actually nice to have a 9 already on the board prior to like at the start of my turn. Like it was just like a really good way for me to have an extra body to make VFD with. And yeah, the following turn, all I had to do was just activate trap and then bait out his Savage and win from there. So I really like Cloud Castle. Like second effect does come up, which is kind of cool. And yeah, of course, it's your best way to make a second VFD, which is like the game plan. Whenever you draw that hand, you always want to make a second VFD because it plays around everything. No one's playing Lava Golem right now because if you're playing Kaiju's, it lets you normal summon, and so the only decks that really are playing that type of stuff is Zoo, right? Like Zoo or maining Kaiju's because they can Kaiju your VFD if you don't shotgun it and then just like play. But when you make two VFDs, Cloud Castle enables that, and it just doesn't lose to anything. Like they can Gamma one of them, and then you can just activate the other one. Coral Dragons, you don't really need to explain it. Just like it's like a really good card. It helps you out like Floodgates if it's like annoying, and of course if it's sent to the grave, you draw. Crocosaur is like insane. I like this card a lot. It's what I end on against Zoo decks, or any back row decks. You end on Croc and then like 6 cards in hand with Trap, and that's like generally enough most of the time. If you're like post side game 3, I actually remembered game 3 against like this Elic player. I actually made Shen, which we'll get to, but I made Shen set Twin Twister, and then pass, and then I just he hand tried me like 2 times, so all the best I can do was like made Shen, and then I just like made Shen. He set 3, and at end phase I Twin Twisted him, and then he just like auto scoop, and then I won a match off that. It was kind of nuts. But yeah, the next card after that is Stardust Charge Warrior. I really like this card because you need to play a Synchro 6 that's a tuner and one that's a non-tuner. Just variations of like a combo. It's a draw card. And the effect to attack all your special monsters actually comes up with number 39 Utopia Beyond. If they have 3 special summon monsters, which they usually do, you can make them all 0, attack all 3 of them. They take 6,000, and Utopia Beyond will attack 3,000 for game. Vermilion Mech is really good. I think this card is probably like one of those cards that has the most utility, and like if you use it to its fullest, it's actually like kind of insane. There's actually a game against Dino. It was actually in my bubble match round 8 where he hand trapped me like crazy, and the best I could do at that situation, I had enough to make a Synchro 9, but that's all I could do. Like the only thing I can do is make a Synchro 9, and that's all I hit. So I thought to myself, like, do I make Crocosaur? Do I make Shen, right? Because Cloud Castle didn't make sense there. I had no level 9s in the grave. So I was like, you know what? This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make Vermilion Mech. I'm gonna banish a tuner, a Lao from my graveyard, and then pop my own Vermilion Mech, and then use the effect of Vermilion Mech to add back a tuner from my banish pile, which is gonna be the Lulu. And then I had a banished Lao, which was banished off of Mech, and then I had a banished Qinglong, which was banished off the effect, which made my trap live. And then because I opened up with Gamma, I had Gamma because I had no monsters on the field at this point. I had the trap, and then I had a Lulu, which guaranteed me a follow-up. So I was thinking to myself, like, I have a Gamma and a trap to pop. I should be able to like Gamma the miss, and then survive with the bodies off Gamma, and then pop with whatever's annoying me. Such as like UCT in battle phase. And if he were to UCT book all my Gamma and driver, I don't remember the ruling, but from my understanding, I don't think it doesn't get banished. So he can't even clear it with UCT because in battle phase I'll just pop it with the trap. So that, and then that's exactly what happened. He went like Oviraptor, dump miss, banish miss. I Gammaed it. He hard drew the pill, but because he hand trapped me a bunch, he had a non-dino. He made UCT, booked all my monsters, went battle phase, and then I popped his thing, and then I just snowballed the turn after because I had Lulu as my follow-up, which was added off of Vermilion Mech. And so, like I said, this card has really good uses if you just use it and get creative with it. Then you have Juju. This card is like insane against like Zoo. It can't be destroyed by battle card effects, which it sounds like not the greatest, but like, when you make this against Zoo, like they just like have no outs. Like their only out is like Whiptail or Zeus, but realistically, it's not that they don't have outs. Like you make this card so that they can't pop it, and then it allows you to use the second effect to banish to send a card on the field, and that's like really relevant because it basically says like your opponent can't drive in this, and it allows you to get away with sending a card to the field. So it just helps you like breaks boards, like going second against decks that aren't combo. Shen's insane, like the Nine-Tailed Fox lore just keeps coming back. And this is like the card you generally want to set up first with like your level 9s because you know that you're gonna recur it back on the next turn. And it like its effect is cost to like summon back from the graveyard. So like you can like, or the effect to banish is cost, which is nice because you can go like Chainlink 1 Shen, which makes your trap automatically live as Chainlink 2 or 3 if you needed it. Omega is Omega. It was like a tech choice. You could have realistically played like anything else in the slot. I just chose to play Omega because I find out that I resolve Gamma a lot going first. And because of that, I wanted to punish my opponent 2 times as much. So I played Omega for that reason. It was also a card that I could have sent off Maximus if you were playing it. And that way I can go Omega, target their App Cologne in their grave for the Invoke Dogmatica Shaddoll deck. It forces my opponent to activate Schism. And then from that point, I can activate Capital, activate the Qinglong from deck, activate Qinglong, banish the Capital, negate Window, and then it should be GG from there. Then you play Zeus because Zeus. You play Gaia because it gets you a 4th material on Zeus. Beyond because Dragoon out. Also helps you OTK. That's the reason why you put your opponent's... When you nib your opponent, you put their token in attack mode for this reason. Fan because it's a way to like banish a card your opponent control and in their graveyard, and that effect is very versatile. But also like this is a card that like cannot be Tridented, which is like important because if they were to Trident the Fan, you get to summon 2 more like level 6s or 2 more level 3s or whatever you want realistically. And that's just like so crazy, right? So they just never Trident this. That you make Breaksword. I never made it the entire tournament. I never went into rank 3s because whenever I could have made a rank 3, it means I could have made a Synchro 6. And all the Synchro 6 are just way better. Like, I would rather make Coral Dragon or like a Juju most of the times whenever I wanted to break boards. And especially going first, I just never... Like, this card is realistically only good going second, but like going second, Coral Dragon or Juju is just like way better than Breaksword. But realistically, Breaksword was like a decent card to be able to like make Zeus with, so it was still there. And just in case you didn't have a tuner, so like if you had like a Ning Ning and a GG, it was a way for you to like make plays and still break the board, and force out a Zeus. So it was like still like okay. Like you also could play Jaja. I think that's what Nets played over Omega. I think that's fine too. Jaja's pretty good. It's a Dragoon out, which Breaksword isn't. Double VFD because your end goal is to make double VFD. That's like the full combo. People think the full combo is VFD plus Shen. But that's just like doesn't make sense because whenever you could have made VFD Shen, it means you could have made VFD, and VFD just doesn't lose to Gamma. It doesn't lose to like realistically like anything. Like it's just like way too insane. It lets you shotgun VFD without worrying whatever your opponent has, which is just like kind of unfair. So the deck being able to put that out, it's nuts. So that's it.
Awesome. And then I guess, do you want to quickly go over the side? I guess it's pretty self-explanatory, I think.
Yeah, side's pretty explanatory. Lance is good for Invoke Dogma, Shaddolls, etc., etc. It's good for the mirror. Like I said, I expected some mirror matches, and I knew that Lancers were good, so I didn't expect that many, but I definitely expected some. But against Dinos, Ash is generic. Ogre is my tech choice for Dragon Link and Infernoble. Dragon Link, when they play 40 cards, don't play Ravine, so this is like additional Gammas, basically. Ogre is also really good against Dragon Link because you can Ogre their field spell. Ogre is also really good because if you were to like draw it going second, you can also like as a 6 card, if you drew it going second, if you bait out Savage Negate, you can Ogre the Savage and their Bustle Lock is just gone. So that's kind of insane. Yeah, and then you have Imperm. For Infernoble Dragon Link, those matchups were scary. Twin for back row decks, you play Twin over Cosmic because Twin discard outlets is really good. Feather's Feather reboot is because you can kill them after you reboot them, and then Pank is just Pankratops. So that's pretty much it for the deck.
Okay, well that was great. Thank you, Pac, for doing this interview and deck profile and being on my channel. Congrats again on your 2nd place finish at LCS 8. Any other shoutouts before we sign off?
No, that's pretty much it, y'all. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. Okay, awesome. Well, that's it for us, guys, and take care.